down in the river to pray. Oh family, oh family, let's go down, come on down. Oh family, let's go down in the river to pray.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Fuller's Asian American Center, our Asian American Student Fellowship, our Diversity Council, Chaplain's Office, and Fuller Chapel, thank you for coming out and thank you for joining our live stream. Tonight, we grieve the violence against the AAPI community, particularly as we reach the 2-year mark since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic and ensuing anti-Asian racism. The 1-year mark since the Atlanta spa shootings, and as we face the ongoing and too frequent violence towards AAPI women and elders. Tonight, we come together to mourn, but we also come together to heal. And we come together to simply be together. Tonight, we honor the life, the breath, and the image of God in everyone in the AAPI community.
In the season of Holy Lent, we are reminded that Jesus entered a garden, not unlike the mall here at Fuller. Gardens are usually places of beauty and peace, but on that evening, for Jesus, it was a place of pain, as it is for us tonight. In his darkest hour, as Jesus was contemplating the cross before him, he invited some dear friends to accompany him, to remain awake, to literally keep vigil. And so we are grateful for all of you keeping vigil with us. Of course, we know in that story that the disciples fell asleep on Jesus. And so tonight we also implore you to remain awake today and tomorrow and the day after. For us, for Asian American communities and peoples all around this country, and for anyone and everyone who lives under the threat of fear and violence, because we belong together. Amen? Thank you again for being with us.
Shootings, murders, acts of violence happen all too often in our world. Somebody asked me, what's the big deal? The fact that a shooting happened or a harassment happened. To understand individual events, we must step back and see the big picture. Since the beginning of the pandemic to last December, there has been over close to 10,000 incidences of anti-Asian hate. And that's just the ones that have been reported. U.S. has a long history of erasing and dehumanizing Asian American bodies. Most people don't realize or remember the fact that lynchings in the West Coast happened against Hispanic and Asian American bodies. But even this history of erasure has been rendered invisible. And even though there actually has been over 170 years of Asian American history, Asian Americans are often not considered American enough to be part of the U.S. history books. That in our curriculums and in our cultural consciousness, Asian Americans are rendered invisible. With that as the background, with that broader purview of anti-Asian racism, that purview of Asian erasure, we come to remember and attend to the specific lives lost, and also to lament together.
I will be voicing words written by Julie Yeon Kim, a current student right now, Korean American, and she's out in the East Coast, and she wrote these words of reflection and perhaps a eulogy. This is the story of 3 months of March. 2 years ago, we caught wind of a strange new virus. In just a couple months, by March 2020, the entire world seemed to come to a halt. When the pandemic first began, I felt our communities take a deep breath. We had hoped that the virus and the violence alike would be a short detour, ending as quickly as it had begun. And the beginning truly was quick. The first blows came just minutes after the news of the spread of the China virus, the hilariously named Kung Flu. We were frustratingly divided then, weren't we? Some of us dismissed the hate against Asian Americans, saying it came from people not representative of the whole country. Why get worked up about something that will be old news next week? Every group goes through tough times at one point or another. This is just our turn. Others of us felt it immediately. We cried, processed, protested, while trying to pinpoint what part of this felt like deja vu. We gathered often because we needed to see faces that smiled, frowned, folded in familiar ways, and said, I get it. I understand. For so long, Asian Americans have accepted our uneasy place in this country, sometimes despised, sometimes praised, and this is a fact. We normalize the racial slurs, even the broken bones, because otherwise we come across a harder truth. Who cares? Who will care for you? So instead, we control and contain the threats, the bullying, the shunning, the unprovoked violence the best we could. The secret to all this, we tell ourselves and our children, is to not care. Ignore them. Take it as a compliment. Then, in the second march, we learned and relearned that hurting us doesn't always require a threat like COVID. Sometimes, many times, all you need is an idea and a gun. Is that where the tides shift? We may not know for sure until the 4th or 5th March, but today feels different, doesn't it? With each new story, it got a little harder to keep our own stories locked up. With each video, the excuses we made and heard grew thinner. With each headline, the many faces, hers, mine, yours, theirs, blended together, revealing the lines circling around us, a community in crisis. Each one exposed a lie and the limit of our own caution. They taught us how to read a murder scene in the spaces all around us. We learned to see the past in the present and the future in ourselves. We learned to see the one in the many. Our lips formed 100 prayers to make up for all the tragedies we were not conscious enough to lament before. Now, on this 3rd March, we accept that this part was not at all a quick detour, a lapse of judgment, an independent psychosis in an otherwise stable condition. This is the fickle, diseased soil of our paths. This is the deranged soul soil of our country. And when it is tilled with unrepentance and planted with prejudice, we build our homes in fields of thorns that shoot up 100, 60, and 30 times over. So what do you do when you're overwhelmed? Have you remembered to breathe? Where do you draw the line between healing the world and caring for self? Friends, this journey will be long and demanding. It will likely be our whole lives. Have you packed enough? How's your load? What are you carrying with you? We can help you let go of what you ought to and clasp what you should never lose. On this 3rd March, I hope we look around and bless the smiles, frowns, familiar folded faces that say, we get it, we understand. May we listen and engage and reject the narrow parts of us that cannot imagine a world without fists and without guns. May we consider the joy it is to walk alongside one another as we map our route to the next march. Here, we bring our colors, stories, hopes, and gifts, each one strange and powerful, and we fashion it into our food for the road.
Now we would like to invite you all into a communal prayer of lament with a call and response. And so we will be reading the prayer, and when we extend our handout to you, we invite you to respond with, Lord, hear our prayer. So let's come before our Creator. To the God who sees us and loves us, we come before you to cry out and seek refuge in your holy name. Our community is hurting, traumatized, angry, feeling helpless, lost, and powerless. And so we come to you.
Lord, hear our prayer.
How long, O God, will the violence, verbal abuse, harassment, pain, suffering continue to be inflicted upon the most vulnerable in our community? How many women and elderly have to be killed for change to happen, for your people to respond? How long must our community remain invisible to the dominant culture, perpetually rendered as foreign, as other, as a people, invisible to the black-white binary? We cry for justice. We cry to be seen and heard. We cry out to you.
Lord, hear our prayer.
How long, O God, for your people to recognize that the Atlanta shooting and the violence inflicted upon women and elderly in New York, in San Francisco, here in LA, in other parts of this nation weren't isolated events, rather part of the ongoing history of violence inflicted upon our community here and abroad. The LA Chinese massacre, the Philippine genocide, the forced internment of Japanese Americans, the Korean American War, the Vietnam War, Vincent Chin, and the list goes on.
Lord, hear our prayer.
How long will Asian hate, anti-Asian sentiment, the fetishization of Asian women, the intentional demonization of Asian bodies continue to plague the collective psyche of our nation? How long must our community be subject to white supremacy and used by the dominant culture to shame and drive wedges between communities of color, mistaking criminalization for accountability, multiplying harm instead of healing it? We cry out to you.
Lord, hear our prayer.
You are a God who enters into the pain and suffering of the world. You are Emmanuel, God who is with us. You are near to the brokenhearted, to those grieving the loss of women murdered in Atlanta, in New York, here in LA, and in other parts of this nation. You are a God who affirms your divine image in all of humanity, who makes the invisible visible. You are a God whose love calls us into existence in the fullness of our particularities.
Lord, hear our prayer.
God of justice, God who sides with the oppressed, you are our source of healing, hope, and strength. May you give us a vision of a world that could be, a world in which AAPI hate and racism in all forms are extracted from our society, a world where women and the elderly no longer have to live in fear. And may you give us all the courage to change the things that we can no longer accept.
Lord, hear our prayer.
May I go with you? May I go with you? Though my soul weak, heavy with grief, may I go with you if you are willing. Lord, would you take this cup from me? Yeah, not my will, but yours be done. May I go with you. May I go with you. May I go with you. Though my soul weak, heavy with grief, may I go with you if you are willing. Lord, would you take this cup from me? Yeah, not my will, but yours be done. May I go with you. Lord, you are with me. Lord, you are with me. Though my soul weigh heavy with grief, Lord, you are with me. Lord, I surrender this broken heart. Won't you receive? Let my soul rest. Yes, she is blessed, for you are with me.
In the Old Testament narrative, whenever someone dies, in the NIV, it's often translated in this way. Then David rested with his ancestors. Then Solomon rested with his ancestors. I find that image comforting, that as our long and tired days on this earth comes to an end, we are received into a community of ancestors. And with that family, we find rest. For all of those we have lost to anti-Asian violence, we pray, may you rest well now. But all of us in the AAPI community, we know that their lives don't actually end there, because we believe in the active presence of our ancestors, that they see us, that they show up in our dreams, that their spirits continue to guide us. And so we prepare our altars, whenever we want to share a meal with them. And we light our candles to pray for our ancestors and also to receive their prayers for us. You see, the Western church taught us that we have an individual faith, that our faith was our own private decision to make to save myself. But our ancestors taught us that we share a communal body, that we have a collective spirit. So of course, we feel it when another body is brutally attacked, because that is our body too. And of course, we're angry when one of us is told, "You don't belong here, go home," because they said that to all of us. And of course, we can feel one another's anxieties and fears. We need a faith that is big enough to hold our communal grief, our shared pains, our united rage. The power in a collective faith is that we all carry with us the strength, the faith, the stories of all our ancestors past, and even those we have lost too soon to violence. We now hold their strength and their stories too. So I invite all of us here to take a deep breath that we may receive and hold together the strength of all our ancestors. Breathe it in. And I pray in the words of Solomon, may God be with us as he was with all our ancestors. Amen.
Friends, we are grateful that you have joined us for our time of lament. We had to do it the Asian American way. I'm sure you've not been to a vigil that had a whole table spread and chairs and an altar. Well, maybe an altar. But we had to do it our way. And part of doing it our way is that we always spread the table for those who join us, come to our homes and sit in our tables and dine with us. And so in that same way, we spread this table for you. We have two things that we're going to hand you as you go from this place, because one of the rules is we cannot let our guests ever leave empty-handed. So there's food on the table that you are welcome to partake in, but we will also be handing some rice crackers as you go, and you can keep that for a later time or you can eat it now. But also we're going to be handing you some candles. I know that the violences have continued. There's some that even happened today, and they're going to continue. So long as racism is still a part of this country, it's gonna keep happening. And I know that sometimes it's hard to figure out how to pray. So when you are lacking words, when you don't know what to do and you don't know how to pray, but you care for us and you think about us, we ask that you would light this candle. Place it somewhere in your home that feels sacred, and light it on behalf of us as you stand with our communities in our journey to continue in this fight for justice. Thank you all for being here. And I'm gonna release my friends here to pass some things out to you, but please feel free to come up, don't be shy. This is a table that is filled with food for all of us to enjoy together, so come right up. And thank you again for joining us in our lament today.
No, we are not an invisible people, but more appropriately, an erased people. An erased people. I used to think that Asians in America were an invisible people. Then later, I learned that, no, we are not an invisible people, but more appropriately, an erased people. America has had a major theme regarding us, to erase our existence and to deny our problems. They smudge us out of textbooks, news, photographs, surveys and statistics, offices and momentous events of all kinds. To erase our existence, to deny our problems. To deny our problems. To erase our existence. Then in my first year teaching young Asian Americans, I learned that it's not just something done to us. We've been made faithful servants who complete the task of our own erasure. We mute our voices, shame our truth tellers, starve our consciousness, burn our books, do everything but prepare for moments like these when our realities erupt onto the scene. So, if you're of Asian descent and you're unaffected by what's happening, or if you find yourself here at this moment without the tools, the language, the knowledge to make sense of this and move forward, I have questions without judgment. When and where did you last see you? At what point did you allow this world to erase you? When and where did you last see you? At what point did you allow this world to erase you? At what point, when and where did you allow this world to erase you? When and where? At what point? I have questions. When and where? At what point did you allow this world to erase you? No, we are not an invisible people, but more appropriately, an erased people. I used to think that Asians in America were an invisible people. Then later, I learned that, no, we are not an invisible people, but more appropriately, an erased people. America has had a major theme regarding us, to erase our existence and to deny our problems. They smudge us out of textbooks, news, photographs, surveys and statistics, offices and momentous events of all kinds. To erase our existence, to deny our problems. To deny our problems. To erase our existence. Then in my first year teaching young Asian Americans, I learned that it's not just something done to us. We've been made faithful servants who complete the task of our own erasure. We mute our voices, shame our truth tellers, starve our consciousness, burn our books, do everything but prepare for moments like these when our realities erupt onto the scene. So, if you're of Asian descent and you're unaffected by what's happening, or if you find yourself here at this moment without the tools, the language, the knowledge to make sense of this and move forward, I have questions without judgment. When and where did you last see you? At what point did you allow this world to erase you?